Sommer war das Gras so tief, dass jeder Wind daran vorüberlief. Ich habe da dein Blut gespürt und wie es heiß zu mir herüberrann. Du hast nur leise mein Gesicht berührt. Da starb er einfach hin, der starke Mann, weil's solche Liebe nicht mehr gibt. Ich hab mich in dein rotes Haar verliebt. Den ganzen Sommer war der rote Mond so rot nicht wie dein Haar. Jetzt wird es abgemäht, das Gras. Die bunten Blumen welken auch dahin. Und wenn der rote Mond so bleich geworden ist, dann hat es keinen Sinn, dass es noch weiße Wolken gibt. Ich hab mich in dein rotes Haar verliebt. Gesicht berührt. Ich habe da dein Blut gespürt. Ich habe mich in dein rotes Haar verliebt. Du sagst, dass es bald Kinder gibt, wenn man sich in dein rotes Haar verliebt, so rot wie Mond, so weiß wie Schnee. Ich hab mich in dein rotes Haar verliebt.
Geef maar een zwaai als we kunnen. Yes? Okay. I would cordially like to welcome everybody at Kunstenlab and the digital live stream to our Finissage of the exhibition Unicode from Hannes and Anna over there, and Small Crimes of the exhibition by Sjoerd Tegelaers. We're now situated, of course, in the big exhibition room because we have to keep distance for 1.5 meters. In these crazy times, so we have a few audience, but we hope to have a lot of live stream viewers or people who like to watch it later on. I'm Patrick Mangnus. I make all the exhibitions down at Kunstenlab together with a big team of other people in the committee. And we'd like to do this Finissage today with a small artist talk, which will be completely in English because so Anna can participate and really find
much.
some answers. Hope it's not a problem for other people. And if you need a translation, please ask. I would like to start at first, as a sort of icebreaker maybe, to have some technical questions to Hannes and Anna. We're situated in your exhibition Unicode with a lot of symbols. And I would like to ask you directly, why did you make it out of concrete? Like the symbols are made of concrete blocks? Is there a specific reason for that?
Well, I think there's a few reasons, of which one is definitely a practical reason, which is that this is not technically concrete, but the so-called aerosated concrete or gasbeton, as you also might know it. and it's very light, very easy to carve in, and generally quite nice material to sculpt. Apart from the fact that it's really brittle and dusty and dirty. And furthermore, I think one of the reasons we chose this material is that it's just, it reflects this sort of construction idea we had about this whole exhibition, that it's symbols constructed out of a raw material, opposed to the normally very flat and smooth look you have with these digital symbols. So
yeah, and we are also inspired, just like Kunstenlab, because it's very industrial space, and let's say somehow white cube, but also yeah, like I said, industrial. So like this material also shows it, because it's pretty clean at the first sight, but then when you see the detail, it's a little bit more like dirty and robust, let's say.
But they aren't really light. If you look upon the smiley right there, it's still quite heavy, right?
Yeah.
You cannot move it by yourself.
Not yet.
yeah, we're about to find out, actually.
Okay. And I would like to refer to the matter of scale, actually, because the symbols we are accustomed to, of course, are small because they're symbols on the screen most of the time. Is there a reason for the scale you use right here, or should it be larger or smaller, or do you have any ideas about that?
Well, I think it depends. Some of them could definitely be smaller or bigger, but in generally we wanted to blow them up to a scale which is relatable for humans. So it's actually things which stand in your way, or you can tip over, or they have a, yeah, let's say a much more physical presence on that scale. But the actual sizes, we chose them by feeling. I guess it's also a matter of composition.
Yeah, exactly. We want to just deliver a nice composition, like in the whole room, and we are working pretty often with blow-ups, so that's why we decided we should do something a little bit bigger for this exhibition.
And the mural, of course, behind us is really big.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's correct.
All right. I have actually the same question for Sjoerd about your technique that you use. You use the mezzo tint a lot, and due to circumstances, I think you would have talked about your technical approach a lot at the catch, at the summer catch. Can you explain somewhat the technique for non-printmakers?
Okay, yeah, I can try.
Can you hold the microphone a little bit closer?
Yeah. Mezzotint, like Patrick said, is a printmaking technique. Yeah, for people that don't know what printmaking is, it's basically you're scratching in a sheet of metal. It's most common, actually. And those scratches, they hold ink, and then when you put this plate under pressure, together with paper, you can make a print, basically. And with mezzotint, instead of making one scratch, you make like the whole plate full of holes or scratches or burrs, which hold ink. So in the first circumstance, or your first print will be completely black. And yeah, that I think is also what makes it special, that you start from black and you go to your wider or lighter areas. So you start polishing areas to create your image, basically. But it's a very time-consuming and very slow technique, and that's why a lot of people maybe are not using it, because there's only, worldwide, there's only a limited or small amount of people that are professionally working with this technique, basically.
And in your really nice publication, you talk about that you want actually to make really large prints, but that the technique has a sort of contradiction in itself because it's so time consuming, and of course you have like the technical defaults in making big prints. How do you consider that? Like we have the blow-ups in the alley, but they're computer prints. Does that make any difference to you?
Yeah, it does, because Well, the reason that I wanted to work bigger is because when you're standing in front of a work, I would create like this feeling that you're inside of it, basically. And if you're working on a very small size, then you have to get very close to get that feeling. Another thing is that I like to use a lot of detail in my works, and the smaller the size, the less detail I can use, basically. And when it comes to the series that you can see here and during this exhibition, it's basically because I had limited time, so I had to decide, okay, what do I want? I want to make a publication, and I want to make a publication with a series, with a lot of works basically in it. So I have to decide to go for a smaller size, otherwise I cannot do it in 2 years. Basically.
Yes, otherwise you would have probably made 1 or 2 big
Yeah.
prints. Okay.
Exactly.
Fair enough. To Hannes and Anna, we had a question on Instagram about the text you've written, and it's about the missing link between the symbols and their context. It states in your text there's no connection anymore, or not a visible connection, or a connection that we are accustomed to anymore. Can you explain a little bit about that? Because we had quite a discussion in our team as well, how to respond on that.
Okay, right. I think what we meant is mostly that you have all these kinds of symbols. Let's take these stars, for example. They don't have anything to do with the idea of the star itself anymore, which is the thing in the sky, and they are just completely taken out of context and basically being charged with a different, completely new meaning, which is now in some sort of rating sense. So the star itself is the symbol. It changed completely within this development, and I think it goes for other symbols too. Let's say we have this check or the X in the back, which could be read as letters or just normal signs, but everyone more or less knows these days that it represents confirmation or declining something. So I think we noticed some sort of shift within those meanings.
Yeah, exactly. It also refers to the smiley, because we all know you can have a good smiley for good things and bad smiley for bad things. So yeah, also like in the kindergarten whatsoever, school. Yeah,
so people right now are brought up with like the emoticons and the changes of values.
It's almost naturally connected now. It became a language by itself, it seems to us. And actually, talking about the smiley, we had some discussions about this, because you could argue that the smiley face itself is representing a happy face, but then we thought it's not only representing that anymore. It's much more than just the happy face connected to happy feelings. It's understood as a general sign of approval or happiness, or you've got the acid smiley too, you've got the Atomkraft smiley, in case you know this one. And it's been appropriated by so many parts of culture, so that it's not really connected anymore to the human face.
Yeah, it's a very prominent symbol, so we just really want to use it in this exhibition because it's also a little bit like a stop moment.
It's very catchy.
Yeah.
Yes. And do you think it's like a universal language? Like, did you investigate, for example, like the differences in between Eastern and Western society, or do you think like these symbols are more or less universal in
I think they are totally universal, to be honest. I mean, because we also have different backgrounds. I'm from Poland, Hannes is from Germany. We know them all, and it's just basically like this pictogram culture right now, which is around us. Or you're going to the toilet, or I don't know, you're at the airport. It's all communicated by pictograms, how you should behave, what you should do, where you should go. Yeah.
And do you think like it's referring to our lives, or do you think it's like a second life that we are now proposing on the internet, on our phones? is it truly what we are? Because it's always a sort of abstract way of expressing, of course.
I think it's working on a different layer, but then again, it's basically people who invented it, so it's part of our nature too. I mean, it's a product of civilization, so it's also a product of ours. So, but it's definitely a layer, an extra layer, just a new sort of language in our understanding.
Okay. I will return to you for more questions, of course, but for Sjoerd, and of course, if you want to react on what Sjoerd is saying, please do. I would like to ask you about the time-consuming way of printmaking that you use. Is that a necessity for you to really get into the theme? Is it a necessity to stop time or refer to other times like I know, for example, you really like the Prince of Goya. Does it make that referring easier to a hero from past times? Is that the time-consuming issue for you, or does it have other reasons?
Well, it's not, for me, it's not really, I don't really like spending a lot of time on one work. So it's not really that I choose to do it. I'm looking for specific quality of work. And the technique mezzotint gives me this possibility to create something that where I can use a lot of detail and where I can also express myself in the way I want. But since I take a lot of time, or I need to take a lot of time to make a work, it also gives me the possibility to keep a little bit of distance sometimes, so to reflect while working as well. So I think also the works that I make are very, very well thought out by this.
Yeah, and the technique doesn't leave you a lot of possibilities to react on the spot. So if a plate goes wrong, then it's destroyed, of course.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah. But you can see it as a sort of investment, because once you have the plate done, you can basically print it off various times. While if you were just making a drawing, it would be one drawing, which you spend maybe a little less time on. But then if you spend more time on making a plate for printing, you can replicate it many times. So
yeah, that's true.
That's what just came to my mind.
Yeah.
Is there still a purpose in using graphic arts in these ways, like making several prints out of one plate? Because printmaking was used for propaganda purposes, spreading. It was actually, of course, art for all people. Do you still keep that in mind?
Well, for me, it feels it makes it easier to include a lot of people in it. I can take a lower price for my work as well, because it's not unique. If you work in an edition, I can adjust the price accordingly. If I make a larger edition, the price will go a little bit lower. So that's, for me, it's a very nice extra thing that's part of printmaking as well. And you said, like, the history is, it used to be propaganda, it used to be reproduction as well. Like, especially mezzotint was used for the reproduction of oil paintings, because you can work in color and full color, basically. But I think, especially the last, let's say, 40 years, it has changed. Printmaking has become a lot more free. Artists are using it in a very free way. So it's not connected to propaganda, for me, at least, anymore. And maybe some artists use it that way, but I think it became more part of fine art instead of something else, you know.
So for you, it's on the same level as painting, drawing.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. And to Hannes and Anna, you used like the laser cut series. Do you see that as a series of works? Like, if you would sell one, would you remake it and keep the series complete, or do you think like, no, was sell one? There's one gap in between.
That's an interesting question. I probably think I see them as a set, kind of, but if one was missing, I wouldn't replace it with exactly the same one. because it's just a selection of those gestures too. So if one was missing, it could be replaced by a completely different one, because there's so many. Maybe it would be even nice if one got missing, so I could bring in another one yet. So
yeah, but we could also easy replace it, because it is a little bit like printmaking, but then digital, because we have the file for the cut. So it would be very easy to just put it in the productions once again. Yeah.
And like in regards of Sjoerd works, he puts a lot of effort in it. How about the outcome of your work? Like, how do you use it, for example, on other social media like Instagram, that kind of stuff? Do you think about that, how it's going around, like after the exhibition or during an exhibition?
Oh yeah, absolutely. I mean, we were even taught at the Aki or in other schools that the documentation is very important. I mean, what will stay in social media, it will stay just right there in the internet. So yeah, it's very important to document your work properly.
And do you think, like now these days of the coronavirus, does it affect your way of thinking and maybe the artworks itself or the context maybe?
I think in general there's a tendency that art is consumed through online media lately, much more than maybe 50 years ago. So I think most people who are going to see those works are going to see them as images or just a documentation of it. So
yeah,
I think,
or even like a digital exhibitions. It's very popular right now to do exhibitions online. So I don't know, in my own practice or yours, I think I'm doing right now much more digitally than before.
I'm still trying to not follow this trend, but obviously I can see where it's going, and technically speaking, it doesn't make a lot of sense to make a huge effort in order to create just one digital image, or if this is the outcome that most people will see. So it always feels a little bit, sad in a way too.
Yeah, because I think on an image you cannot really feel or sense the materiality of the works and the effort you put into it, or maybe the slight failures into it as well. And of course you have to steer people through your exhibition, so it's different than, I guess, like people moving around by themselves, having their own thoughts and associations.
Yeah, and it's also constantly getting like very fast boring, because you have only like 10 seconds or even less to look in the image, and then you're like, okay, I saw it, thanks, next one.
Hey, and for you too, it was really the first time that you did a cooperation in an exhibition. How was that? I know you made a new animation or 2 animations for this exhibition, but also like working together. How did that turn out to be?
Yeah, I mean, in the end it was all fine, but we had like some rocky ways on the way.
We're still here together, so
Yeah.
That's good.
but it was challenging in many ways, because it's already hard to make decisions by yourself, and then if you have to make decisions which both people are fine, it becomes at least twice as difficult.
Yeah.
Is there now that you are more aware of the differences in between your own artistic practice as well? Could you state that?
I think so, yeah. Because in the beginning we thought we will just do everything together, like collaboratively, and then in the end we only did like the main exhibition, the sculptures, and the rest we just said, okay, you will do this and you will do that, and actually it worked out perfectly. Because, I don't know, we have this feeling that we are working somehow similar and we are thinking similar. So.
But maybe the outcome is often similar, but the way we work to produce is probably quite different. So that was probably the most challenging.
Up to an artwork is different for both of you.
Yeah.
And
nice.
does it like open new doors for you as well? Are you planning to collaborate in the future on more projects, or is it like this one time?
I think for now we're good. maybe wait a year or so, but
yeah, we also like have different projects right now on the way. So if somebody will ask us to do something collaboratively, maybe, but it depends.
And how is it for you, Sjoerd? Like if you have your works finished, you will put them on your website, on Instagram, on Facebook, of course. But you wanted actually to make a physical publication. Is that different for you? And can you explain why, maybe?
Well, yeah, of course, social media is a very big thing right now, and it's also it makes it easier to show your works around the world. So that's a big plus in using the social media. But it's only, for me, it feels like it's only a platform and nothing more than that. Like an exhibition where you can physically see the works is completely different. The experience that you have at that time is also completely different. And for me, that will always stay more important than social media or using an outlet like that, basically.
And we put both of your exhibitions together because of the use of humor and absurdism. I think that's a thing that's visible in both exhibitions. Can you state, Sjoerd, why you use a lot of humor or absurdism or maybe links to surrealism in your works?
Well, the theme of my works is mostly based around human emotion, morality. Those two things are very important. Especially this series is mostly about morality in Western society, so I'm looking at situations where something good or bad is happening and it affects your behavior in a way. And some of these themes are quite difficult or confrontational, I would say. Something like loneliness is very difficult to depict, but also maybe very confrontational for people. That's why I use humor to break it open a little bit, to make this subject still possible for people to go in this subject while not being confronted too much by it, basically.
So it makes it accessible for, like, say, a lonely person.
Yeah.
Maybe to start talking about it or get the feeling back, like, okay, so it's open for discussion, open for debate.
Yeah, and it's also, for me, it's a way to create some sort of connection with people, like even regardless of their religious beliefs or political beliefs or just human connection, basically, in these works. I hope people can find these connections, basically.
Okay. And Hannes and Anna, do you feel like the same? Is it does it make an opening? Like for discussion, debate, because you break the ice, probably, let's say, like, people have to laugh a little or
chuckle.
I think that's a good word.
I think it makes it more accessible, definitely, just like Sjoerd said. And in general, I think it's always a nice touch if you keep it a little bit more lighthearted, because art and the art business in general are so often dead serious, and you've got nothing to laugh about. So I think it's nice to just keep it maybe not shallow, but in a way that people can relate to it easily, and also most of all have fun with it, instead of just try to think very hard to make sense of something. It's much more immediate approach.
Yeah, it's just basically a nice balance to some serious topic and humor, I think. I don't know.
And there's also situations or things in the world where no other emotions basically fit. So let's say there's something really sad, and it becomes almost absurd in a sense that you don't know which emotion to pick to react on it. Should you cry or scream? Or I think laughing is always like the ultima ratio where nothing else is fitting. So that's an interesting aspect of humor in general, I think.
When things are too sad or too...
maybe it's not humoristic then, but laughing as a symptom of not knowing in a way. So,
Then it has a sort of ideology behind it, of course, but you don't want to overload people with maybe the questions behind it. Or you are aware of the questions and the troubles behind it, and humor is just a depiction of the shortcomings, maybe.
Yeah, and I don't think we want to put the finger on a certain subject and say, this is how it is, and now look at yourself, and do you see what's wrong? So it's always nice to just keep it a little bit open in a way, and try not to make it didactic or so, to let people know that you would know better or so from above, you know.
Okay.
So it's a conversation on eye level. We're both laughing at the same stuff here, basically.
Yep. And Sjoerd, in your publication, you state as well kindness instead of provoking, and maybe the hint for the freedom of speech. You don't want to provoke people. I think that's the main thing. It's like humor as a laughter, as an entry to start a discussion. How do you feel, for example, about if we think about the works of the Chapman brothers, like really provocative? Does it open for you a certain discussion, or are you rejected by it?
Well, for me, it feels very easy to make a decision like that, to make a work that's very provocative. For me, just like it doesn't have enough layers. It just has one. It
provokes, and
that's it. And I would prefer, in my own practice, to create works that are more layered, that have more directions or more options, basically. So if one person is looking at it, you can have a different opinion. You don't have to follow my way of viewing it. You can decide for yourself what you want to see in this work or what you want to connect with. So that's, for me, it feels like very easy to just have one thing, like provocative nature. That's, for me, it's not interesting, basically. It's too easy.
Mm-hmm. Is therefore your artworks always like figurative based? As a sort of...
Yeah, well, I just follow what comes in mind, basically. So these images I have in mind, and I can get inspired by a lot of different things, like music or conversations or things like that. And it just stays like that. I have this image in mind, and I want to show it to the world, basically.
But it is about human nature, after all, so it's just logical to have human figures in it too.
Yeah.
I mean, with all these little interactions.
Yeah, and also I use a lot of symbols. Basically, I use animals that can symbolize an emotion, or that can symbolize something different as well, or objects that have a different meaning or have a symbolized meaning, basically. So I can create very layered works in that way, I would say.
And these symbols are more related to our Western art history, I guess.
Yeah,
like
I would say so.
That makes it not universal, maybe, but maybe more like, well, like you told already, like it's for the Western morality question, actually.
Yeah, because I don't really, I haven't lived in the Middle East or in Africa, or so I don't feel that I can talk for that culture. It's not my place to talk for that culture. I can talk about it, but I cannot pretend like I know, basically. No. But I know about Western culture, and I know, I have the feeling that I can criticize or do something with that, because I'm part of it, basically.
Yep. And Hannes and Anna, do you think like the ways of your works, are they figurative or a sort of abstractions?
Somewhere in the middle. I would lean actually more towards abstract, to be honest, especially with this exhibition, because obviously we were working like a lot of with symbolics and very raw material, and just trying to flip the whole meaning, on the emojis and pictograms. So I would lean towards abstract. I don't know about you.
In a way, you could, I mean, I agree, but you could also say it's figurative in a sense that they are not really abstract because they do have meaning these days. I mean, it's not concrete abstract, like just a line or just a circle or a splash or so. They all are basically charged with meaning already, so they don't become figurative in a human sense, but they do reflect some sort of human touch to me.
Yeah, so 50-50.
Yeah, agreed.
And what are your plans now with the works after this exhibition? Do you know already?
We don't really know. We're gonna take them down for now and bring them back to Leipzig.
We have a very nice place in cellar.
We have a
in
special
our
spot
studio.
reserved for them, but there are no concrete plans yet. What's gonna happen with them? We're probably gonna try to keep them intact as long as possible. And
yeah, maybe we'll do exhibition in our garden. Nobody know.
yeah, they're weatherproof, so that's quite a bonus.
Yeah.
Maybe we find some nice people with a garden to dump it in.
Yeah, I would think
With the permission, obviously.
for me the smiley would be wonderful at a roundabout, for example.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, I could also see it, but I guess it would be a little bit short notice now on a Sunday afternoon.
Yeah.
But we just saw an empty roundabout in the city here, so
Yeah, maybe we'll just like drop it somewhere in the graveyard and do a great documentation and put it on
Oh, wow,
Instagram.
yeah.
For sure. I mean, it sells, no?
That sounds good. And Sjoerd, I was wondering, like, you really make a series out of the works, Small Crimes, and you depict like small things that go wrong. Does it reflect the big things that go wrong, or don't you want to tip those topics in your work?
Well, when I started with the series, because I received from the Mondrian Fund a stipendium for young talent, and that also connected to that was a deadline. So like we talked about before, practically it was very difficult to create a series using larger works. I had to like stay practical about it and decide to choose a smaller size to make more works, basically. And yeah, when I decided, okay, I will have to go smaller, I also started thinking about, okay, what can I show? Because these very big themes that I want to work with, like the things that are happening in the world right now, they are not possible to show, or maybe not by me, to show on the smaller sizes. I really need more space to create something like that. So that's when I decided, okay, I will use the smaller size and I will show smaller crimes, basically. Like smaller behaviors of people that are, in a way, still affect day-to-day life.
There's this print of the death of decency, somebody coughing out without coughing in the armpit or in the elbow.
Yeah, that's actually before the lockdown and before COVID. So it's like was already in my mind. Like, okay, people can do that if you're in public transport. Like, it happened quite some times, you know, when I was sitting in the bus or in a train and people were sneezing like openly, like. Come on, what? It's very impolite, you know. It's not really.
But it was way before the COVID crisis.
Yeah, it was. Yeah,
that's fun.
Yeah.
And, can you say something about how this crisis did it affect your work or?
Well, yeah, exhibitions were cancelled, so that's one thing. That's one big thing, actually. I think for a lot of artists, it's a very hard time, and also for places like this, for Kunstenlab, like you don't really get the visitors that you want. You have these restrictions that are making it quite difficult to, show.
It's difficult to have a decent opening, for example.
Yeah.
Of course. Yeah.
Or right now, Finissage, where we were, of course, hoping to get more people here to show these great works that we have here. So that's one thing. But for me, like ideas that I get also right now through the COVID crisis, they will come back later in later works. So I have a notebook where I always write down new ideas, and I have quite a lot based on this period. So I will probably make a series of works that are around this subject only. So Yeah.
So it's a post-COVID small crime series.
Yeah, probably. Yeah.
Are there any questions out of the audience, maybe? Do people... Yes?
Yeah. Sjoerd, you lived in Spain for a long time and Romania for a long time.
Poland, actually.
Oh, Poland.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. But what did you learn of the people over there, and do we see it back in your work? Or?
Yeah, in some works. I actually, when I was living in Spain, I created works that were also about the culture of the Spanish people. Bullfighting, for example, was one theme that I used in a work from that period. And in Poland, I was, like in some images, it comes back, the mentality that I felt there, and also the connections that I made with people. I think always in a sense things come back in later works. It's just for viewers maybe not very obvious. Only for myself, like a very personal thing. I know exactly why I make a work, and a viewer can have another connection to it. So it's sometimes a little bit difficult to explain how people can see this connection with Poland, for example. So.
Yeah, this would be interesting also for me. Which work was inspired by Poland? Because me and Sjoerd, we are living together.
Yeah, we were.
Yeah, I was studying in my last year, and he was doing the postgraduate. He was working very, very hard, I can tell you. But yeah.
Well, there's one work. It's called "Who Cares About Dramatic Potatoes?" That was
right.
created in Poland and also based on experiences I had there. So that's the one that comes to mind right now. So.
Do you experience any differences in because you studied in Poland, Anna?
Yeah, I was studying in Poland, in the Netherlands, and right now in Germany. So to be honest, like mentality difference, I can say it's very, very different here in Netherlands, but between Poland and Germany, I don't see any difference. I mean, yeah, I think people here are more positive.
Okay.
Yeah. So.
Wow.
What did you say? Yeah. So that would be basically it. I don't know.
Does that reflect the positivity in the way you are taught, or what?
In the way what?
You were taught because you said I'm working, I've been studying in Poland and Germany.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I think so because people are here much more positive. I think they give you much more freedom, because studies in Poland were pretty strict. Sjoerd can also say it, because you have like real classes and you need to be there at 8 o'clock, and they will check if you will be there. So so I would say it was a great time to do an exchange here. It was one of the better decisions which I made.
Was it hard to go back? Like if
hard.
If you do an exchange,
I actually really want to stay, but the problem was they said to me that I need to go back to the bachelor, and I said nope.
Yeah, I would say also that in Poland, I noticed at least in the schools that there's more. There was a lot of technical knowledge. That was also for me a reason to go there to study certain techniques in like a deeper sense, I would say. But it also, because I was studied only for 1 year at the university there, and one teacher was actually quite difficult. He made my life impossible in one class, because he felt like, okay, you don't really know enough to start working on your own, so I need to supervise every class, but you only get 2 hours a week in my class to work. So it was, for that technique, lithography was not enough, and that made it quite hard to...
Yeah, that's the problem about the teachers and Polish universities, that they think that their subject is the most important subject. in the whole studies. But I mean, it's not bad to learn technical stuff. It really depends also like what kind of subject you do, you know, because I remember in sculpture we had like everything possible, like from small sculpture till, I don't know, wood techniques, welding, and so on and so on. And when you're so loaded, you cannot really focus on your own stuff. That was the biggest problem, I think.
So perhaps a combination between the two.
Oh yeah, that's why it was perfect.
Sjoerd, you refer to sort of craftsmanship. You think that's really important?
Well, for me, it was when I was studying at the Aki, I was also looking for a way to make my works the best way possible, basically. And well, you know as well yourself that in printmaking there is a lot of options. There's a lot of ways you can go. You can there's a lot of techniques you can work in. So I experimented with a lot of different ones. Was never really satisfied at all. Like always looking for a new way, and then I discovered Mezzotint. That was for me, sort of a trigger to find out everything I could about this technique. And when I was studying in Spain for 6 months, I discovered photopolymer etching, and that was also, for me, it was a sort of a revelation, basically. So, I would say it's quite important. For me, it was quite important. And now I know which techniques I want to work in. I'm more focused on the image and on the idea and on the concept, basically. So when I was studying, it was all about craftsmanship, and now it's more about concept. And
so you needed the technique actually to get your ways of working and your concept behind it.
Yeah, sort of basis of
level.
knowledge. Yeah, and from that point on, I could start making what I wanted. So. Yeah.
I think it's two sides of the same coin, basically. In order to make good art, you cannot do it without having the technique. But then again, if you just have the technique, you're more like a craftsperson, and the art aspect of the concept and the content and everything is probably as important on the other side.
Yeah.
So
you need to find sort of
balance.
Yeah, exactly, a balance between both worlds. I would say is the best. For me, it worked perfectly. It took a long time, but now I'm quite happy with how it's going. So.
And how is that for you, Anna and Hannes? Like, this was, I guess, like a new way of working, like using the gas concrete blocks and stuff. That is, of course, like a new thing that you encounter then.
Absolutely.
Or try out, or...
Yeah, I think it was quite interesting to work with this material, as well as especially this aspect of building a wall first and then basically taking it down in order to cut out the shape, so it looks like it's been cut out from a wall straight away. But also here I think the technique or craftsmanship in a way plays quite an important role, because obviously they're not perfect. They're far from perfect, but it needs to have a certain level of accuracy, I think, in order to make it work. And I think if it's done well, you won't see afterwards how much work it actually was to do it. So it has this light touch to it.
Okay.
If a work looks like a lot of work, it's usually not a good sign, to me personally.
So it should look easygoing.
Exactly.
Okay. Are there any more questions?
I actually have a question that goes into that as well, because I'm just curious how you want maybe even the audience here to physically engage with the work, because I do see a difference between people going into the work of Sjoerd, like with the technique as well, seeing the work that is into it. And here sometimes some people really go by really fast and really flatly just seeing it. Any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think it's just two different approaches, basically, because obviously Sjoerd is working in a way which is, you presented a frame in which something is going on. It's like a window to look in, sort of, and there the whole story happens. Well, this if you see it as a metaphor, the window is the space itself. So you're already in it. You don't need to look closely on every centimeter of the works. It's more like you become part of the whole thing, the composition. So I can understand that people just walk through and experience it in a more physical way than just to look and...
Yeah, that's true. And also, you need to see it this way, that, for example, in the evening when the Kunstenlab is closed, but you still can see everything outside. Like, we have our own frame, which is this garage door, and people are just stopping by and like holding into the exhibition more rather than inside. So you just need to somehow see the different perspectives of the works.
But I think this is generally a question regarding two-dimensional and three-dimensional works. It's either you have this frame to look in, or it's something which is physically in the space and it has a backside too, and maybe even a smell or a texture. So obviously you have that with painting too, for instance, or even graphics. They have a certain texture from the paper. But I think most people will look for content within this frame. Like, it's hard to compare those two, in my opinion.
Are these works that you created here also, do you mind if people touch it? Because that's also part of sort of physicality and sculpture that's possible.
Well, if they don't like drop it or break it, if you have a good touch and you don't break it with your fingers, it's definitely encouraged to do so. But maybe this announcement comes too late now because the exhibition is over.
And do you have any thoughts, like if people would stop by at the window, do you hope that they take something along in their heads that will, when they leave, with your image in their mind, maybe? Do you hope that they have several questions, or do you like to pose an answer, or do you like to pose more questions to the viewers?
That's a tough one. I don't think we can give like direct answers, because therefore we would need to know their questions in a way. But then again, this work it's so lighthearted that it doesn't really raise any serious questions. It's more, I think, creating a little sort of sensibility for the whole topic of symbolism and the way we use science and language in general. So if people see the smiley and they wake up the next day and think, oh, that was weird, big smiley there, I'm pleased, you know.
Okay. So a small disturbance, actually.
Yeah,
okay.
you could call it like that.
Small drive.
Would that suit for you as well, Sjoerd? Do you like to have like more of an open discussion, or more like people touch several topics?
Well, yeah, I would like people to start thinking about certain subjects, like morality, for example, or situations where they recognize. Maybe because I create works that are also about myself. There are certain situations that I'm depicting in my works that I've been doing myself as well. I cannot say that I'm always a good person, basically. So yeah, maybe that's something I want to give people, like start thinking a little bit about how your behavior can also affect other things. And but even if they don't, then it's fine as well. Like, there's no necessity. It's just like I talked about before, like this, I want to create this sort of connection between people, and if they find it, then it's great, and if they don't, then it's great as well. Like, it doesn't matter that much.
You're not the innocent one to cast the first stone.
No, exactly.
Okay, but therefore, I think it might help that your work is figurative in a way. Of course, like people recognize things, so that maybe makes it quite accessible. And of course, like some small issues, we will all encounter.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, and I think figurative works. I maybe it's difficult for me to explain, because it's like always this image that I have in mind, and it's always a figurative image. Abstraction, I tried working with it when I was studying, but it doesn't do anything with me. I cannot really unleash my emotion in it, basically. So yeah, I always sort of grab back to figurative works because I want to, yeah, in a sense, I always want to touch on a specific topic or theme.
And tell your story, probably.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Is maybe that why it's related so much, for example, to a little bit surrealism, like the fluid dreams, maybe, because you have them in your mind?
Yeah, I think so. Because even in my mind, it's not really focused and clear. Only when I create it, then it's a thing, basically. And in my mind, it can still go in different directions. It can still change. You also know, of course, as a printmaker, that you always work in a mirror image.
Mm-hmm.
So your actual print is different from what you've been working on normally. So that also makes a little bit of an abstraction out of it, basically.
Do you use like digital imagery to reverse that, or do you just work on the plate and with a test print you will see the outcome? Or
yeah, in the test print, that's the first time I really see the results. But I use transfer paper or transparent paper, basically, to make a global sketch out of a work before I start putting it on a plate. And of course, I can reverse it, so I can get a little bit of a guess.
You know the composition.
Yeah, exactly.
But then always it's like this, pulling the paper from the print is like the first aha moment, or maybe not.
Yeah, many cases, like when I was studying, it was always, sometimes it was very surprising what happened. And now I can, because I have a little bit more experience, I can predict a little bit better what the outcome will be, and also how much time it will take me to make a work, for example. So, but it's always a little bit of a surprise. You never really know what you're gonna get when you're a printmaker, I would say. So,
I think we had the same surprise here with your works when we pulled the paper from the mirroring.
Yes, I remember everyone was waiting for this moment, and I waited till the last minute to do so. Yeah. No, but I mean, I could already kind of see where it's going, but obviously, if you have works like this, which are either yes or no, I mean, you don't know whether it's gonna look the way you imagined or not. It's always a moment of truth when you actually reveal it or do the last finishing touches. With the other works, it was different. We had a lot of room to experiment, and if you cut off a little bit too much, then you just cut off more on all the other sides too, and it's fine again, you know. So.
And then you end up with a sculpture this big.
It could have happened. I mean,
I think it's almost time to wrap it up. Do you have anything to say at the end, or are there any more questions from the audience, maybe?
Did you have works that collapsed, that did not make it till here, or?
No, actually, all of them survived, thanks God.
yeah, actually, we wanted to do one more work, but we wanted to buy the concrete here, but then we found out, maybe on a nice side note, that in the Netherlands, this material is not as popular as in Germany, so it's really hard to get. And eventually we had to just skip the plans because we didn't get the stones. So that was quite a surprise too, in a way.
That's why we did the video. No, but I just want to say a big thanks to the whole team of Kunstenlab and to Alt, the best curator. Thank you.
Yeah, I can just subscribe to that. Thank you guys for having us. Much appreciated. And yeah, we hope to be back someday for another exhibition.
Great. Sjoerd, do you have anything to add or
to
say
add to
maybe to the viewers? Or?
Well, of course, the viewers, I hope that you liked this artist talk and that maybe it gave a little bit of some answers and a little bit of insight in our works and in our way of thinking. I'm very happy to participate in this exhibition and have this possibility to show, because it's the first time I'm showing the complete series, and also I'm of course presenting the book as well. So that's for me it's a very important step in my career as an artist, and I'm very happy also to be together with Hannes and Anna. We haven't seen each other in a couple of years, so yeah, it's very great to be here and be together. So,
likewise.
Yeah.
Good. Well, Yes?
Are there any online questions?
Online questions. I can't see the chat, so.
All right.
Like
There
and
you go.
subscribe.
It's good to know.
So thank you for this a little bit, of course, weird finissage, but thank you for your time and effort in this artist talk, and of course for the entire exhibitions, which I think really fit together as a whole. So thank you. Thanks.
Thank you, Patrick.